بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا وأنت تجعل الحزن سهلا إذا شئت. آمين. Okay, so Surah Al-A'la will be starting today. So, like I said, inshallah, we're going to try to do one page a day. Now, I'm looking at this, and it's looking like it's probably going to take like 3 classes, and maybe 2 classes to do this one surah. I think honestly we could spend the whole entire class on ayah number 1, or like ayah 1 to 3 maybe, but we'll see inshallah. Let's see how far we get into it. I guess to start off, inshallah, we could do a review of the last surah. Where is it at? Let me just, is this? So Surah Al-Tariq, we did all of it, I believe. I think we did from the beginning to the end, actually, alhamdulillah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So, we discussed in Surah Tariq, there was like 2 major themes. The first being that of secrecy. Allah Ta'ala, He does hadf of a lot of things. The second thing was, where is it at? The journey, the concept of journey, going from one stage to another, and recognizing that throughout the world, and then applying it to ourselves, where we realize that we too are on a journey from this worldly life, from our childhood towards maturity, old age, and eventually towards something after that as well. So Surah Al-Tariq was-Sama'i wa-Tariq wa-ma adraka ma-Tariq an-Najm al-Thaqib. Have I been skipping like the tarjuma part of it? I mean, like for like a lot of our classes, like I just give like a lot of it's a very like lecture based, right? But so do I end up skipping like the actual words and stuff like that, like the actual tarjuma part of it, or no? For sure, for sure. Okay. والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق النجم الثاقب. So he says, Allah Ta'ala swears by the sky and the tariq. The tariq, as we said, it comes from daraba. Daraba bishiddatin, for something to like trample upon something else. And we also said that it is used for the night comer. So when someone comes at during the layl, and for example, if they were to knock on the door, then that hitting is it's a lot louder. It grabs your attention a lot more. So this is of course referring to the stars, as we had discussed. Right there it is. And we discussed the difference between samawat being like the heavens and the different layers of the heavens, sama being anything and everything above. Tariq, okay. Tariq, we said refers to the sky. وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الطَّارِقُ. Then Allah Ta'ala Himself answers the question, what do you know of the Tariq? He says, النجم الثاقب. It is the piercing star. So, as we said, one of the usages of the qasam, by taking an oath, Allah Ta'ala is making that thing a witness, which gets lost in translation when we translate it to English. We don't normally say that, but like you're taking an oath on, I swear by this individual, or in this case, Allah Ta'ala is swearing by the sky. Allah Ta'ala is making the sky a witness. He's making this tariq, this an-najm al-thaqib, a witness. And we discussed that, if you were to be in your room all by yourself and you have a window in the room, that no matter how much you try to cover yourself, no matter what, like you put a blanket over your head, that light will still pierce through and you can still tell that it's daytime. So similarly, Allah Ta'ala's witness of these stars and all these magnificent stars that Allah Ta'ala has placed in the sky, including the sun, of course, these things are all a witness towards us and we cannot escape their sight. And of course, by extension, we cannot escape Allah Ta'ala's sight. And then Allah Ta'ala brings the ayah, in kullu nafsin lamma alayha hafiz, that every single individual, every single person, they have a hafiz over them. They have a angel that is writing their deeds, as we have discussed before. كِرَامٍ كَاتِبِينَ يَعْلَمُونَ مَا تَفْعَلُونَ. So the analogy is that there's these stars that are overlooking you and they watch over everything that you do and they are witness to you. Similarly, Allah Ta'ala has placed these angels over you that are watching over you and they look at what you do and they're witnesses against you as well. فلينظر الإنسان مما خلق من ماء دافق يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب. And then Allah Ta'ala, He implores man to look at his own creation, what was his beginning, from what was he created, مما خلق. And again, the theme of secrecy coming again, that Allah Ta'ala, He didn't say, He didn't, it's the fi'il is majhul, meaning the fa'il is lam yusamma, there's no fa'il that's mentioned. So Allah Ta'ala has hidden away His name from being mentioned here with the fi'il of مما خلق من ماء دافق. He was created from this dirty fluid. He was created from a spurting fluid. يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب. Dafiq, we had mentioned that dafaqa means for something to like burst, like in a dam, like if the dam was to break and all that water gushes forth, that's what dafiq is. يخرج من بين الصلب والترائب. Sulb referring to men, والترائب referring to women, meaning that there's men and women both involved in that process, and it comes from the baby will come from the both of them. إنه على رجعه لقادر. Indeed, He, إن الله لقادر على رجعه. أي إن الله قادر على رجع الإنسان. So إنه referring to Allah Ta'ala, على رجعه referring to insan. That He is, Allah Ta'ala has the ability and He's capable of returning them. So again, this theme of journey that Allah Ta'ala is taking, life is stage by stage, and eventually there's going to be a stage after death as well. يوم تبلى السرائر, on a day in which the secrets, the very heavily guarded secrets, shall be exposed. فما له من قوة ولا ناصر. And that individual, they won't have the ability to hide it themselves, nor will they be able to ask someone. If they don't have the ability, or if someone doesn't have the ability to do something, they ask someone's help for it. And Allah Ta'ala says, وَلَا نَاصِر, there won't even be anyone to help that individual as well. Similar to the ayah of يَوْمَ لَا تَمْلِكُ نَفْسٌ لِنَفْسٍ شَيْئًا وَالْأَمْرُ يَوْمَئِذٍ لِلَّهِ. Over here, that no one will have the slightest degree of being able to help one another, and the command and judgment will be for Allah Ta'ala on that day only. وَالسَّمَاء, and then we come back to this, again, this theme of journey. وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الرَّجْعِ, Allah Ta'ala takes the oath by the sky again, that which possesses a raja, something that returns, referring to the rain. وَالْأَرْضِ ذَاتِ الصَّدَعِ, and He takes an oath by the earth, which possesses Sada' is like the vegetation that comes forth from it. فَيَخْرُجُ مِنْهُ النَّبَاتِ, that the plants and greenery come forth from the cracking of the earth. So again, what we're saying, talking about the whole process of resurrection, as we see in the earth, season by season, year after year after year, it goes from being alive to dead, alive to dead, alive to dead. Similarly, Allah Ta'ala will also make us from alive to dead to alive again. إنه لقول فصل وما هو بالهزل. Then Allah Ta'ala talks about the Quran. What does the Quran have to do with وَالسَّمَاءِ ذَاتِ الرَّجْعِ وَالْأَرْضِ ذَاتِ الصَّدَعِ? So Allah Ta'ala takes an oath. For what reason is He taking the oath? To emphasize the fact that إنه لقول فصل. The question is, what does Revelation have to do with the water cycle? Were you able to find out more detail about this, Arsalan? GGG. It did seem like they knew about some details of the water cycle. إنه لقول فصل, that so we said that the connection between Revelation and the water cycle and rain and all these things, that I think we mentioned like two or three. Let's just mention one, is that just like how the rain comes and gives life to the earth, similarly Revelation is something that comes down from the sky and it gives life to insan. It's not a joke. That this Quran is not for entertainment, it's not for amusement, rather it is something that is the fasil. إنه لقول فصل, يميز بين الحق والباطل, that this is the Quran, this is the kalam of Allah Ta'ala, which distinguishes truth and falsehood. إنهم يكيدون كيدا وأكيد كيدا فمهل الكافرين أمهلهم رويدا. Indeed, these kuffar, they are plotting their plots. All these different groups, they're plotting their plots. They have their attempts to take down Islam. They have their attempts to ridicule and oppress the Muslims and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam. وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا, Allah Ta'ala responds that I have my plot. So we said that two fawaid was that the first being that إِنَّهُمْ يَكِيدُونَ كَيْدًا, that all these different groups have all their different plots. إِنَّهُم, this inna gives the ma'na of effort. They're exerting themselves into taking down Islam. وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا. Allah Ta'ala doesn't say وَإِنِّي أَكِيدُ كَيْدًا, because Allah Ta'ala doesn't need to put the effort. It's just kun fayakun. It's just automatic, right? وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا, and Allah Ta'ala, his one plan takes care of everything. It's not that he needs to have multiple plans to take care of their multiple plans, just his one plan that just completely obliterates everything. فَمَهِلِ الْكَافِرِينَ أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا. So just give them some time, oh Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, grant them some respite for just a little while longer. رُوَيْدًا. And as we said, it's interesting because it's the Muslims that are getting bullied, they're the ones that are getting oppressed, they're the ones that are getting tortured and hurt and all these different things, but they're the ones that are still in control. Why? Because they're part of the Hizbullah. They're part of the army of Allah. They're part of the group of Allah Ta'ala, the army of Allah Ta'ala. Right? Surat Al-A'la. And A. Sorry, I think you cut out a little bit. One more time. The difference between Makar and Kaid. Makar and Kaid. I wrote this down. Why did I not mention it? Makar. Oh, actually, this is a good point too. Kaid, okay, Makar is like a deceptive plot. Allah Ta'ala says, وَمَكَرُوا وَمَكَرَ اللَّهُ, that they have their deceptive and mischievous plots of just basically just ideas of their plans of evil. Okay, that's Makar. Kaid is their secret plots that they're trying so hard to keep under wraps. It's their discussions behind closed doors regarding the Muslims. It's their discussions regarding with all the elites having behind closed doors. Again, which fits better with the theme of the surah, which is all about secrecy. وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا. Yeah, I have it written right here. Number 15 to 16. Okay, anyways. Surah, also, yeah. A lot about for a change, I have Mutala today. What? I have Mutala today for a change. Alhamdulillah. May Allah Ta'ala grant us istiqamah. Okay. Okay, Suratul A'la. The one thing that I said I wanted to share with you guys was the whole discussion on the qira'at and stuff. It just came to mind like now. Because now that I'm looking at Surah A'la is like one of my go-tos for when we're studying a different qira'at. Sabbih isma rabbika la'aleh. So in Khalaf and stuff like that. So that's a discussion we still need to have, actually. We'll see when that happens. I have no idea. And then there's another, actually, already a really long discussion here with the whole concept of naskh and what does that entail and stuff. And that's like the last thing I wrote down. So I doubt if we're even going to get to that discussion, which is it's already going to take a long time going over it. Anyways, let's just get started. 18. Okay. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. So, would you like to... Your voice is really muffled. Okay, let me, can I just keep it like this, maybe? Yeah. Actually, I don't want to just turn it off. I know you guys prefer... Yeah, let me just see if I can be a bit more clear and louder. Okay, so, if it's not good, just, I'll just turn the camera off and stuff and place the mic closer to me. Okay, so Surah Al-A'la. He says, what does he say? The surah that opens with the command to highly exalt God, the divine one, who is the most high, far above all that is unworthy that people wrongly attribute to him. That's what Sheikh Saki Hamad says at the beginning of the surah. You can still hear me good? Okay, Surah Al-A'la. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى. Okay. You want to go ahead and translate or? Okay, inshallah. Actually, wait, sorry. Okay, Surah Al-A'la. Sorry. First we have just the breakdown of the surah, and then we can get to translate. It's like four things that we need to read actually before we even start translating. Sorry. So Surah Sheikh Sabuni, he gives the surah, the intro to the surah. He says Surah Al-A'la min Surah al-Makkiyah. It's from the Makki surahs. وهي تعالج باختصار المواضع الآتية. And he says it comprises of the three following discussions. The first being الذات العالية وبعض صفات الله جل وعلا. It talks about the high and the almighty being of Allah Ta'ala and some of his qualities. والدلائل على قدرته وعلى القدرة والوحدانية, and it gives some proofs for the all-encompassing power that Allah Ta'ala has, as well as His oneness. So it talks about Allah Ta'ala, some of His qualities, and it gives proof for His ability to do whatever He wants, as well as why He is one. The second thing that it talks about is al-wahyu wal-Qur'an al-munazzalu ala khatam al-rusul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa taysiru hifzihi alayhi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then it talks about revelation, and talks about how the Quran is sent from Allah Ta'ala, how it was sent from Allah Ta'ala to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the last of the prophets. And as we see explicitly in the surah, it talks about how the memorization of the Quran was made easy for him. That's the second point. That's the third thing that we're going to talk about. موعظة الحسنة التي ينتفع بها أهل القلوب الحية ويستفيد منها أهل السعادة والإيمان. It talks about how the people who have live hearts, whose hearts are alive, are able to, it's actually very beautifully worded, whose hearts are alive are able to take benefit from this Quran, and how the people of Iman and good fortune again benefit from its advices and reminders. So ابتدأ السورة الكريمة بتنزيه الله جل وعلا الذي خلق فأبدع وصور فأحسن وأخرج العشب والنبات رحمة بالعباد. The first thing that the surah talks about from ayah number 4 till like ayah number 5-ish, yeah, ayah number 5, 1 to 5 talks about how Allah Ta'ala is free from any nuqsan, He's free from any attributes that take away from His perfection. He's the one who created and He originated things, and He created and He fashioned them, and He fashioned them beautifully, and He brought out from the earth vegetation as a rahmah, as a mercy for everything, really. He said bil ibad, but for everything. And then we'll talk about the tafsir, inshallah, more. ثم تحدثت عن الوحي والقرآن وآنست الرسول بالبشارة بتحفيظه هذا الكتاب المجيد وتيسير حفظه عليه بحيث لا ينساه أبدا. And as we said, talks about the Quran and how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam gets a glad tiding that the hifz of it will be made easy for him, and he will never ever forget it. ثم أمرت بتذكير بهذا القرآن. Then it talks about how the surah talks about how it is a command of the Quran that a person benefit from it. الذي يستفيد من نوره المؤمنون ويتعظ بهديه المتقون, and that the mu'min, the true mu'min who has iman, will be able to benefit from its light, and the true muttaqi, the true God-fearing individual, will be able to take advice from its guidance. قد أفلح من تزكى, and that's that part. I don't even think we'll get there. Anyways, okay, now we have a few more discussions regarding just the background of the surah. So this surah is one of the al-musabbihat. Anyone want to take a guess at what that is? Al-musabbihat. This is what's that? Glorifications. What's that referring to? Anyone wanna? You Hafiz? G. Okay. Inshallah. Inshallah. Actually, I remember seeing like a post or like some picture of like Qari Saleh Peck, who's the one of the teachers of Qira'at and Shafi'i fiqh over in Darul Zakaria. He said that anytime he would ask someone if they're Hafiz, and then if they responded by saying no, he'd scold them and say, "Don't ever say no. You should always say Inshallah, even before you say no." Uh, Everywhere he, mashallah. Okay, al musabbihat. Yeah, Hamza, you're gonna say something? Gigi. Exactly, perfect. All the musabbihat are the surahs that begin with this one form or another word of from coming from this word of tasbih. So you have subhanalladhi asra bi'abadihi, then you have sabbaha lillah, you have yusabbihu lillah, then you have sabbih isma rabbika a'la. In total, they are seven. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They are Suratul Isra, as we said. Where is that narration actually? I might as well just give you guys the numbers so you don't have to like. Oh my god. Okay, never mind. This is gonna be too long. So you have Suratul Isra, Suratul Hadid, Suratul Hashar, Surah Isra, Surah Hadith, Surah Hashar, Surah Al-Saf, Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Surah Al-Saf, Surah Al-Jumu'ah, Surah Al-Taghabun, and lastly we have number 7 is Surah A'la. So Isra, Hadid, Hashar, Saf, Jumu'ah, Hashar, Saf, Jumu'ah, Taghabun, and A'la. So this is Surah A'la here. So in Surah Al-Isra we have Subhanalladhi, which is the must like the noun form. In Surah Al-A'la we have the Amr form, and the rest we have a form of the Maldi or Mudari. Now regarding these, I believe in Tirmidhi, it talks about how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam he would read these surahs before going to bed at night, and that's like I remember it's in the portion of the book where it talks about like all the different surahs that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam would read at nighttime, and it pretty much mentions like half the Quran that he would read like this surah and this surah, and if you add it all up, it's like okay, so the tadbiq is that some nights he would read certain surahs, some nights he would read other surahs, and so on and so forth. And regarding these 7 surahs, it says that إن فيهن آية خير من ألف آية. That in رواه الترمذي وهذا حديث حسن غريب. That Imam Tirmidhi he mentions the narration that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that in one of these 7 surahs there is a verse of the Quran which gives more reward for reading it than reading 1,000 verses. It has the reward for 1,000 verses of Quran. That's why he would read them all like over time. So inshallah, we could maybe over the next week or so, or even over the next month, or however much time you want to take, we could just read like a quarter, and then that would take what? 2 days, another day. Yeah, you can read it in like a week. You read like a quarter, 5 pages of Quran, inshallah. You could read or if anyone wants to do more or less, then inshallah, it could take about a week to read just these 7 surahs. May Allah Ta'ala give us tawfiq. Additionally, we see that in the previous surah, Surah Al-Tariq, Allah Ta'ala commanded Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam to turn away from the plots and plans of the disbelievers. Right? Allah Ta'ala says, فَمَهِلِ الْكَافِرِينَ أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا. Don't even worry about them, grant them respite, leave them alone, don't even let them bother you, and so on and so forth. So what is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to do in comparison? If he's not going to be focusing on them, what should he be focusing on? So here Allah Ta'ala gives a commandment that سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى. Why does this keep closing? Okay. Additionally, there is something that I wanted to share from Mufti Shafi's Ma'arif al-Quran. So he mentions like 3-4 rulings, which I'll be sharing throughout, maybe when we get to the ayahs and stuff. So the first thing that he says is that scholars have ruled that when anyone recites the verse سَبِّحِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ الْأَعْلَى, it is commendable to say that Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. I pronounce the purity of my most exalted Lord. So this is the practice of many of the noble companions, like Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar. I think that's a typo. I'm pretty sure that's Ibn Abbas, Ibn Umar, Ibn Zubayr, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in. Whenever they started reciting the surah, they would recite Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. And it should be noted that the desirability of reciting this is outside of the prayer. Like you wouldn't say this while you're performing your salah, performing your namaz. Okay, narration in Sunan Abi Dawood is, let me turn my notifications off because I think one of my class group chats is about to go off right now. Okay, so he says, actually I have it open right here. That the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, oh no. Okay, here it is. عن عمه عن عقبة بن عامر قال لما نزلت فسبح باسم ربك العظيم قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم اجعلوها في ركوعكم. That when the verse of فسبح باسم ربك العظيم was revealed, Nabi صلى الله عليه وسلم said اجعلوها في ركوعكم. He said that you should use this phrase of this dhikr, this phrasing of the dhikr. This should be used when you're doing your ruku'. And فلما نزلت سبح اسم ربك الأعلى قال اجعلوها في سجودكم. And when this verse of the first verse of Surah Al-A'la was revealed, he said this is the phrase, this is the using of this phrasing of the dhikr should be used when you are making your sujood and you are prostrating before Allah Ta'ala. Okay. Now, inshallah, you could go ahead and translate the first 3 ayahs. Sorry. Verse 3, please. Yeah, did its taswiya. Mm-hmm. So, what is it? Mm, make well, make equal to like level out. Mm-hmm. والذي قد yeah, third ayah. والذي قدر فهدى. Okay, we'll talk more about how to translate qaddara, inshallah, as it has a few different translations and guided it. Yeah, فهدى. Okay, so سبح اسم ربك سبحان ربي الأعلى سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى. So highly exalted is the name of your Lord, the Most High, the one who created, then gave it form. He translates it. فسوى, he says gave it form. You could also, Mufti Shafi translates taswiya as, and it literally means to make well or even. The verse signifies that Allah Ta'ala made the constitution of everything symmetrical and made it consistent in its several parts. Yeah, you can say gave it form, leveled it out. He's talking about like the actual the the body of the thing and how it's built pretty much. وَالَّذِي قَدَّرَ فَهَدَى, and the one who determined and guided it upon its way. Okay, so now number one. Okay. Listen. So right off the bat here we see something that's different from Surah Al-Tariq, whereas Allah Ta'ala, as we said, Allah Ta'ala hid his name from uh, hid many different things in Surah Al-Tariq, as that's secrecy was one of its themes. But Allah Ta'ala, He, like in, for example, Mimma Khuliq, the fa'il was not mentioned, who is Allah Ta'ala. Innahu ala raj'ihi laqadir, the fa'il is not, the ism, the bariz is not mentioned there as well. Allah Ta'ala doesn't explicitly mention His name in that surah. Over here, right off the bat, it's mentioning isma rabbika. The name of Allah Ta'ala is mentioned right off the bat. Sabbih from sabaha means to swim. What type of swimming? It's not like swimming where you're like deep diving or like what's that called? Where people start like jumping into caves and they have like water and like lakes underneath the caves and stuff like that. It's nothing like that. No going deep beneath the surface, exploring like the vast marine life. Rather, this is not to go under the surface. Swimming, basically like floating, pretty much. So now, what does floating have to do with when we think of tasbih, we think of glorifying Allah Ta'ala. So what does floating have to do with glorifying Allah Ta'ala? What's the connection of, like, why is tasbih used for glorification when it literally means to swim, when it literally means to float? It's because when you're floating, you're not going beneath the surface. Similarly, we are not going beneath the surface and degrading Allah Ta'ala in both his that or his sifat in any way, shape, or form. We're not degrading or misattributing things to Allah Ta'ala. We're saying things about Allah Ta'ala that should not be said. Okay. Now there's no ba. Now if you look at this verb being used in in different ayat, Allah Ta'ala says Surah Al-Nasr, إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك. Right? It doesn't say فسبح حمد ربك or something. Additionally, Allah Ta'ala, when He's talking about this is what the angels say to Allah Ta'ala in the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, first juz, regarding the creation of Adam alayhi salam. وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So, what is the difference of mentioning ba and not mentioning ba, as we see here? So, in those two verses that I shared, as I think I'm sure there's more examples. It's that when you bring it with the ba, it means to declare Allah Ta'ala's perfection by using His divine name. Because the ba will mean like with or by this sabab, by this medium, you can do the tasbih. So declare His perfection by using His divine names. Here, the not having the ba implies that you should know, retain, and recognize. or recognize that سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, that the that of Allah Ta'ala should be free from any sort of nuqsan on your part. And this only way you could do this is by recognizing the what is appropriate to say and what is not appropriate to say, so that you can make sure that you're not saying anything inappropriate. You can make sure that your aqidah is correct, first and foremost as well. Does that make sense? Yeah. Cool. Okay, so using ba leads to dhikr. Okay, so when you say نحن نسبح فسبح بحمد ربك, praise your Lord by using His divine names, or ونحن نسبح بحمدك, it's basically dhikr, that you're glorifying Allah Taala by mentioning His name. However, um, not using the ba, it really leads to an attitude change. Additionally, we should, okay, so meaning that a person should, like we said, this is about more recognizing the rights that Allah Ta'ala has over us in terms of what we believe in Him, what we believe regarding Him, as well as what we know to be necessary for Him, or what we know to be unnecessary for Him. As I'm sure maybe you guys discussed in your books of Aqidah and Kalam that you guys did in first year, inshallah. Like those things that are necessary for God and those things which are not necessary for God. Is this ringing a bell? These terms maybe that I'm using is making sense? Okay, great. Um, good. Have you guys done al Barahin? Or maybe like in English, maybe at the end of the year? No? Okay, that would be a good thing to go over, inshallah. Maybe I could try to find like an English class or like a playlist online for you guys. That's a very, very good, important, like beginner work about like aqidah and such as on like kalam and whatnot. So not using the ba leads to an attitude change. That a person's attitude should be that my Lord is free from nuqsan. He is free from any sort of deficiency and imperfections and any sort of faults and these types of things. Additionally, we shouldn't be involved in settings and conversations that don't allow this. Meaning, if there's people that are, it's actually very common in like Western culture, it's like always you try to make fun of religion. Not we, but the people try to make fun of religion. People try to poke holes at this idea of God and all these different things. These are some things that we should recognize as inappropriate. So, what is this ayah really saying? It's saying that there's a hypersensitivity that we should have towards tawheed, that we don't let anyone say anything slightly, or of course not anything major. We wouldn't allow anyone to say anything that goes against our belief. We don't allow anyone to say anything that goes against this idea that we have of Allah Ta'ala and His perfect attributes. And we don't allow anyone to say offensive things that take away from the perfection of Allah Ta'ala. Now the ism being Zaid, as mentioned in Jalalain, he says, سبح اسم ربك الأعلى أي نزه ربك عما لا يليق به ولفظ اسم زائد أي ليس بمتعين بل كما تنزه الذات ينزه الاسم أيضا عن أن يسمى به غيره. So he says that ism, one of the reasons ism being used here and why it's not like سبح ربك الأعلى or something like that. Why is ism being used here? Is because it's not specific. Of course, we're still talking about Allah Ta'ala, but we know فَلِلَّهِ الْأَسْمَاءُ الْحُسْنَى, that Allah Ta'ala has many divine and beautiful names. وَدُعُوهُ بِهَا فَدُعُوهُ وَدُعُوهُ بِهَا, right? That we can call, and all these different names, they're still all belong to the one same being, which is Allah Ta'ala. So when we say ism, it's very general, meaning that we could praise Allah Ta'ala and any of His names. We could use any of the names to praise Allah Ta'ala. If the Rather, we should. Okay, let me just read what I wrote off here because I feel like that didn't make sense. Rather, we should be aware of all the divine names and what they entail and require from us so that we don't say anything incorrect. So, like I said, we should be ultra sensitive to this whole concept of Tawheed. Any questions so far? No? Okay, great. Now, something that oh shoot, I skipped something. Okay. Let's just mention the thing. Okay, so Mufti, like I said, Mufti Shafi, he mentioned a couple of rulings in the beginning of this surah. And he says that So for this whole concept of this ultra sensitivity towards Tawheed and how we should make sure that we defend Tawheed like at all costs. He mentions that. Besides, it is also included in the above imperative that there are some names exclusively meant for Allah Ta'ala. Calling human beings or any other creation by those specific names is contrary to declaring the purity of Allah Ta'ala. Therefore, it is not permissible, as mentioned by Imam Qurtubi. Nowadays, people are not particular about names like Abdul Rahman, Abdul Razak, Abdul Ghafur, Abdul Ghaffar, and Abdul Quddus. And they call the people, like if there's someone whose name is Abdul Rahman, they'll just call him Rahman. They call this someone whose name is Abdul Quddus, they'll call him Quddus. They call him Razak, they call him Ghaffar, which is, of course, and so on and so forth, for short. People have got into the habit of shortening such names without realizing that the speakers as well as the listeners are committing a sin, and people commit this joyless sin day and night without any reason. So some commentators interpret. Okay, so that first point, there are some names that are specific to Allah Taala that we should not be calling anyone else. Okay, so Rahman probably being the most popular, that we shouldn't be. If someone's name is Abdul Rahman, we shouldn't just call them Rahman. Okay. Now, the one thing that I was trying to figure out, but I didn't find any like detailed answer on, is that, well, there is names like Rahim that we know can be used for both Allah Ta'ala as well as individuals. So it wouldn't be, if someone's name is Abdul Rahim, it wouldn't be inappropriate to call him Rahim. Like, it wouldn't be sinful. Whereas calling someone whose name is Abdul Rahman, calling him Rahman would be sinful, because that's a name exclusive to Allah Ta'ala. What exactly is the difference, like the line that separates the two? I'm not exactly sure, which is actually something I need to look into. So let me just write that down. I tried asking some of my co-workers now about. I didn't really. I forget. Honestly, I forgot what he said. If I don't think he gave me a definitive answer either. I felt very weird to say. I'm used to saying like my classmates or something. Anyway, some commentators interpret the word ism does not mean name in this verse. Instead, they say it is referring to or the being of Allah Ta'ala. According to the Arabic expression, this interpretation is not unlikely. The Quran has used the word ism in that sense also. The hadith that instructs us to recite the tasbih in sajda is not. When we're saying sajda, we don't say we say subhana rabbi al-a'la. We don't say subhana isma rabbi al-a'la, correct? So I pronounce the purity of the name of my exalted Lord. But yeah, we don't say Subhana Isma Rabbil A'la. We say Subhana Rabbil A'la. We're actually exalting, and we're calling, or we're doing tasbih of the actual being of Allah Ta'ala. So this indicates that in this context, ism is not used in the sense of name, but it refers to the being of Allah Ta'ala Himself. Did that make sense? Ism versus, again. Okay, let's see if I'm skipping over anything. Okay, I did skip over ruling number 2, which he says. Oh, actually, no, it's the whole "ij'aluha fi sujudikum" thing, which we had mentioned already. Great. So ism. Okay, Rabbik. Why Rabbik? Sabbih isma Rabbika. Why use Rabbika? Why not use Sabbih isma Khaliq, Khaliqik, Khaliqik? Okay. Why use specifically Rabbik? It's similar actually to if you guys remember in Surah Inshiqaq, Allah Ta'ala says, Ya ayyul insanu. No, this is Suratul Infitar. Ya ayyul insanu ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. O mankind, what has deluded you from your noble Lord, from your Lord that has granted you so many favors? Ma gharraka bi rabbikal kareem. Anyone remember what we said over there for the usage of the word Rabb? So we said that Allah Ta'ala is asking like this rhetorical question. O mankind, what was it that turned you away from me towards like the dunya, towards sin, towards shaitan's plan, towards all those things? Rabbikal Kareem. Allah Ta'ala says Rabbik, and He uses the word Kareem. So we said Rabbika over there is being used because Allah Ta'ala could use any other attribute of His, but He used Rabbik because when you say master, when you say someone's the Lord, or when you say someone's like your master, it immediately gives the opposite end of the relationship as well, which is slave. You have master, if there's a master, there has to be a slave, right? So This is showing us that ما غرك بربك الكريم, that it is truly insan's fault that he has turned away from his master, because a slave is supposed to be ever obedient. It's supposed to be 110% obedient and compliant to the will of the master. Rabbik al Kareem, and then just in short, I think we said over there that Al Kareem is being used because is it because Allah Ta'ala was so nice to us? Is it because that every time we did a sin, He didn't just zap us with lightning? Is that why we were? Is that why we decided to turn away from Him? Is that why we decided to be deceived from into going into our own ways, into doing our own sayyat and all these different things? So Rabbik, why Rabb? At the heart of our relationship is master and slave. When we think of any divine name, it should go back to Allah Ta'ala being our master. So when this attitude isn't there, then that is when people start to say whatever they want. And in other words, the tasbih, okay, so in other words, tasbih won't happen until accepting Allah Ta'ala being our Rabb. Sabbih isma rabbik. That if a person won't do the tasbih of Allah Ta'ala until they recognize this quality of Allah Ta'ala, which is that He is their master and their Lord. Okay? They accept Him having authority over them, which is a huge problem that is found nowadays, because a person, everyone, and at this point, all parts of the world, like a huge problem that they have with religion is that they just don't want to accept that there's someone or something telling them out there, telling them what to do, that you can't do this, you can't do that. Make sense? Okay, so when people question Allah Ta'ala or say inappropriate things about Him, it's because they have a problem with this, with Allah Ta'ala having an authority over them. Al-A'la. So this is a sifa for Rabbika. Rabbika al-A'la so it's a sifa for Rabbik, and it's not a sifa for the word ism. So it's not Sabbih isma al-A'la. Okay? So now we could talk about the Nahu aspect of that. He mentions it in the Hashia of Jalalain over here. I believe he's quoting Sawi. But I don't think we need to go into that right now. Pretty much, because it's coming after Rabbik, it's better to just make this a sifa of Rabbika, as opposed to saying that there is the Mawsuf, there's another word in between, and there's a sifa after that. So that's pretty much that. And then there's another workaround that you can make Nahu-wise into saying that actually it's not such a big deal if you call it this thing, and saying Na'at for the Mawsul and all those different things, but we won't worry about that right now. So سبح اسم ربك الأعلى. So in the previous surah, Allah Ta'ala talks about the impressive tariq. So another connection to Surat Tariq, we talked about how it's the sky, it's a star that's very high in the sky, that's shining so very brightly. But Allah Ta'ala, he even calls it an-najm al-thaqib, correct? But Allah Ta'ala, is greater than even that magnificent star that you guys love so much, that you guys deem to be so high and so amazing. So a'la comes from ala, ya'alu, ulu, which means to be high, lofty, to be raised in rank. So in the tafsir called Nazm al-Durar fi Tanasubi Ayati wa Suwar, I think is the full title, by Alama Biqai. This is a tafsir which is, when was it written? Let's see. My fault. Let me just, if I remember, this wasn't written all too long ago, which is the reason that he passed away in. Okay, no, maybe I'm thinking of something else. Adwa Bayan. I think that's what I'm thinking of. My fault. So, Nazm Durar fi Tanasubi Ayati wa Suwar. It's written by Alama Biqai. And this work, what he does is he takes this enormous task of basically mentioning different reasons why is this surah after this surah, why is this ayah after this ayah, why is this word after this word, which is like the fa'idah I just mentioned about what's the reason for using rabbika as opposed to like using a different word, as opposed to like khaliqika, right? So one of the things that he mentions is that he mentions that in the previous surah, Allah Ta'ala at the end of the surah, he says, "Innahum yakiduna kaida." But Allah Ta'ala is a'la. He is al-a'la, meaning that their kaid, it can't even reach him. Um, Allah Ta'ala is so high in his majesty and his grandeur that their kaid, that their secretive plots, they can't touch him in any way, shape, or form. Additionally, Allah Ta'ala also says, وَمَا هُوَ بِالْهَزْلِ. That the people of the Quraysh and the Mushrikun, or even nowadays, what they call the revelation something that's like, they treat it as, like we said, something that's amusing, something that's entertainment, something that's just like for fun, something cool to listen to or to talk about, to even study. Even there's non-Muslims that have like PhDs in like Islam, right? In Hadith and Quran and in Arabic and all these things. But for them, it's what? It's not Hidayah. It's like an academic exercise or something, whatever you want to call it. So وما هو بالهزل. That's not the purpose of the Quran. In reality, what are they doing? They're not just insulting the kalam of Allah Ta'ala, but they're not just insulting the speech, but they're also insulting the speaker. So what does Allah Ta'ala say? He is Al-A'la, he's beyond these claims of hazal that you throw against the Quran. So this ayah is the rebuttal. In Jalalain, there's the two hashiyas. Did I already read this one? Yeah, I already read it. Oh, I didn't translate it though. My mind's all over the place when it comes to this class, man. Just so much stuff like everywhere. I try to write it down, bullet points and everything, and then I don't know. It still somehow just gets. It's just like a lot to mention, especially for the surah too. Like I said, it's gonna take a while to get through. But anyways, he said ism. Which one was I supposed to read? Jalalain two hashia. So he says, "Sabih isma rabbika ay nazzih rabbak." نزه ربك إلى آخره وقيل نزه أسماءه عن الإلحاد فيه بتأويلات الزائغة وإطلاقه على غيره. So one thing he says, basically saying that you want to not ascribe any nuqsan, any deficiency to the names of Allah Ta'ala, yani to the, you don't want to describe anything imperfect to Allah Ta'ala by making like weird interpretations of how exactly Allah Ta'ala works and how exactly His sifat work and those types of things. وذهب جماعة من الصحابة والتابعين إلى أن معناه قل سبحان ربي الأعلى. And many of the Sahaba and Tabi'een, they say that this سبح اسم ربك الأعلى, this command of glorify your Lord, the Most High, is basically saying that you should say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. So inshallah we can say that now. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. وعن ابن عباس سبح أي صلي بأمر ربك الأعلى. سبح بمعنى pray. Pray. Okay. ولفظ اسم زائد أي ليس بمتعين بل كما تنزه الذات ينزه الاسم أيضا عن أن يسمى به غيره. Like we said, ism, it's not specifying a name of Allah Ta'ala firstly. Why? Because you could this concept of doing tasbih of Allah Ta'ala is not just that you do you're only concerned with you don't want to apply nuqsan or any deficiency to a specific name of Allah Ta'ala, rather to all the names of Allah Ta'ala. That's why no specific name of Allah Ta'ala was mentioned first. ومن جملة تسميه الاسم ألا يذكر في مواضع أقذار, and one of the ways that we shouldn't do that we should one of the things that this ayah is teaching us is that we shouldn't mention the name of Allah Ta'ala in filthy places, whether that be like physically or like in an improper setting. وبأن يذكر على وجه التعظيم والتفخيم في المواضع الطاهرة الفاخرة. And that we should always make sure that we are mentioning it in an appropriate setting and in a respectful and dignified manner. ومن جملة تنزيه الاسم استحضارك عظمة المسمى عند ذكره. And that doing, this is very important, doing true tasbih of Allah Ta'ala is not just using words or something. It's not just like it's not just lip service. Rather, true tasbih of Allah Ta'ala is making sure that He is at the forefront of our mind when we are doing it. That we should be cognizant of how powerful He is. We should be fearful of Him, and we should have love for Him. We should have this taqwa of Allah Ta'ala, and that inshallah will be true tasbih of Allah Ta'ala. One question that comes up regarding the sifat of Allah Ta'ala is that how do we not throw any deficiencies to Allah Ta'ala when we have limited language? So for example, we say Allah Ta'ala inna rabbahu kana bihi basira, that indeed his Lord is ever watchful over him. He sees. Indeed Allah Ta'ala sees. But don't we also see? So how to think of tanzih with the limited language? So there's a couple of things that we should keep in mind when, even though we say that Allah Ta'ala sees, and me, myself, or all of us, we also have the ability to see. So is this some sort of deficiency that we're giving to Allah when we say that Allah Ta'ala has the ability to see? Or so what exactly is like the workaround around that? Does that ishkal like make sense? The question make sense? Okay, so then there's three different things that we could think of to make sure that we don't ever try to equate our attributes with Allah Ta'ala's attributes. The first being that meaning that Allah Ta'ala, He has no beginning and no end in his attributes, right? Allah Ta'ala, he is azali and abadi. His attributes are azali and abadi. Allah Ta'ala's attributes don't have a beginning nor an end, whereas our attributes, of course, have a beginning and an end. Second thing is that the limit are like if we say, for example, me Mustafa have the ability to see. Well, I can only see what my two eyes allow me to see, whereas Allah Ta'ala is not limited by just anything that's like in front of him, or like what would this be, like 160 degrees in front of him, and then include my peripheral and all those things. Allah Ta'ala is not limited by that. I can't even see certain things. I can't see behind this wall to my left and right, or behind me. I can't see inside myself. There's certain things that I just literally I cannot see. Whereas Allah Ta'ala, He doesn't have those limits. So there's time, there's limits, and the third thing is that this is something that was granted to me, whereas Allah Ta'ala, this is something that's part of His that. These sifat are that's a discussion as well. But these are things that they weren't like, it's not like someone gave them to Allah Ta'ala, but rather these are qualities that were given to us. So those are three differences that show that although we may use the same wordings, that Allah Ta'ala is alive and I'm alive, Allah Ta'ala hears and I could hear, Allah Ta'ala loves and He gets angry just like I love and get angry, those things. Although if we keep these three things in mind, inshallah, that'll be something that separates us from, doing some sort of tashbih or tajseem of Allah Ta'ala. Making giving Allah Ta'ala, we don't want to give Allah Ta'ala a body, and so these things will help us with that. QT notes, some things that Mulana Yusuf mentioned. Man, I wrote really terrible back then. Okay, QT note 2. Okay, سبح اسم ربك الأعلى تنزيه الله عن النقائص, that we do not ascribe any. So sabih means tasbih means to not ascribe any nuqsan and any deficiencies to Allah Ta'ala, as we said. So it's two things. It's salbi. Oh, okay. It's nafi and ithbat. You guys have heard these terms, nafi and ithbat? Yeah, you have. Come on, yeah, you have. Yeah, ithbat is the opposite, where you assert something. G. Okay, great. Ithbat is where you're asserting something, and nafi is where you're asserting the opposite of, or you're making sure to not assert that thing. You guys know what nafi is, okay? Anyways, how would you say it? Ithbat is you assert something, and nafi would be that. What's the opposite of assert? Oh man. Okay, whatever, man. There's two different things going on. We're doing the ithbat by doing hamd of Allah Ta'ala, and the nafi is doing salb. Meaning, when you say subhanallah, you're not just saying that we declare and that we believe Allah Ta'ala to be free from these naqais. We believe Allah Ta'ala to be free from these deficiencies and these imperfections. But at the same time, it's also doing hamd. So it's two things at once. Okay, it does two jobs. Last hadith of Bukhari. Do you guys want to go over this? With our 2 minutes left? I think for the sake of it being Milana Yusuf's notes, we gotta. Last hadith of Bukhari Sharif. Anyone know the last hadith of Bukhari? I know. Yeah. You got the beginning part. كلمتان حبيبتان إلى الرحمن خفيفتان على اللسان ثقيلتان في الميزان. So وبه قال حدثني أحمد بن إشكاب قال حدثنا محمد بن المفضيل عن عمارة بن القعقاع عن أبي زرعة عن أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه وعنهم قال النبي صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم كلمتان حبيبتان إلى الرحمن خفيفتان على اللسان ثقيلتان في الميزان سبحان الله وبحمده سبحان الله العظيم. This is yeah, I'm reminded of the Jalsa from a couple months ago. We had the honor of reading this in front of what was there, Hanabazi. So, narrated by Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala an, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa says that there are two words which are kalimatani habibatani ila rahman. They are beloved to ar-Rahman, to the most merciful. خفيفتان على اللسان, very easy to say, very light on the tongue. ثقيلتان في الميزان, but they weigh very heavy in the weight in the scales on the scales of the day of judgment. And they are Subhanallah wa bihamdi, Subhanallah al-Azim. So Imam Yusuf mentioned that kalimatani habibatani ila rahman. They are beloved to Allah Ta'ala, meaning that anyone who read these words will also become the mahbub ila rahman. These two words will be the cause of the mahabba of the ar-Rahman. Subhanallah bihamdi, Subhanallah al-Azim. Okay, so تسبيح الاسم باللسان وتسبيح الذات بالتفكر. So tasbih, you could do it. Oh, I think this goes back to, this is something that he mentioned. I just mentioned this earlier, right? That the having the ba means that you use the names of Allah Ta'ala as the way to do his tasbih. When you say فسبح باسم ربك العظيم. سبح اسم رب what was the ayah? Inshallah, and we'll end with this. سبح بحمد ربك. That you use these names of Allah Ta'ala to glorify him. You call him Ar-Rahman, and that's the way to praise Allah Ta'ala. You call him Al-Ghaffar, you call him Al-Wadud, all these different names of Allah Ta'ala that he has revealed to us. If you use those names, you're able to gain a reward, and you praise him. And to do tasbih of that, to do tasbih, to praise Allah Ta'ala and his being, is by contemplating over Allah Ta'ala. So this is, like we said, when you don't use the ba, sabbih hisma rabbikal a'la, it's when you're doing tasbih of the being of Allah Ta'ala by having the proper aqidah, having the proper ilm and recognition and understanding of who Allah Ta'ala is. Did he mention anything else? Nope. Whatever. Okay, and that's not even but it's already 9:02, so inshallah we will end here. When I said that it would take the whole period to talk about this first ayah, I kind of just meant it as like, I didn't really think that would happen. We're not even done yet. Anyways, actually, there's like a 550 page book by Nasiruddin al-Maqdisi, passed away in 842, and it's called Majalis في تفسير قول الله تعالى لقد من الله على المؤمنين إذ بعث فيهم رسولا منهم. Talks about that ayah. Talks about one ayah for 550 pages. So inshallah we're following the footsteps of this. I'll just say nowhere close to that, man. Like that's one ayah for 550 pages. He talks about it. So maybe one day we can get there. We just talk about one ayah for the entire year. Inshallah. Hopefully Allah Ta'ala gives us those the tools to do that, inshallah. Anyways, 9:03. Sorry for going over time. Subhanallah, bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.